Today, we're very excited about our guest. Our guest is Kayce Maddux. She is a Catholic convert. She's a Spanish interpreter in the pro-life ministry. And Kayce's going to be telling us her story about how she came into the Catholic Church and the journey in and out and resetting as we do. And she has a beautiful story to tell. And Kayce, for me, she's a Spanish interpreter at Her Choice Birmingham Women's Center. So when we have clients that come in that are considering to have an abortion, or they're in an unplanned pregnancy and they're just scared, they don't know what to do with their pregnancy, maybe they need to place their baby up for adoption, Kayce is my go-to beautiful blonde-haired lady who speaks fluent Spanish, and you kind of look at her and you go, those words should not be coming out of her mouth. But she's beautiful, and God has used her mightily to save many a babies. And so I said, hey, don't be nervous about coming on the show today, because just think about, it's nothing like being in the counseling room with a girl who's considering an abortion. This is easy peasy. So we'll have a good time sharing with her.
Today we're focusing mainly upon Kayce as a witness to the good news of the church.
Yes.
So it's kind of her testimony as you shared. And then in the second show, if things go accordingly on Thursday, then we'll share about her witness to the gospel of life and her story. Both of them are really riveting. In many ways, I think it's going to speak to people, so it's really powerful. I did want to mention a friend of mine by the name of Mark Medlock, and this fits with Kayce coming in. So he, I met this guy. I do a lot of witnessing at the YMCA.
You do?
I've been going there for like 40 years, and we just have religious discussions, oftentimes. And I met this guy, Mark, and one thing led to another. We just started speaking about the faith and share with him about the Catholic faith and church. And so he was saying, he's Methodist, but I had an experience with the Catholic Church. I really liked it, but I never went back to it. So, but that was especially my lead in. I said, well, that's the roots of everything. It goes back to the church, and here's what it's about. It's shared as much as I can at the YMCA. So we had several different conversations. He wasn't a big talker, but he was pretty quiet, which could mean I'm mad, or it could mean I'm really listening, or it could mean whatever. He was really listening. Anyway, he came into the church.
Yes,
I didn't even know he was coming in.
He went through the RCIA program at St. Paul's at the cathedral.
Yeah, so we were there as he came in. Beautiful guy. And we need to share our faith. God, are you praying for the opportunities to share, like people shared with Kayce? And we share with Mark, especially at this time, and all the complexities and joys and sorrows within our country. The key is to do the work of evangelization. You've been called to evangelize. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Don't go.
Welcome back while you're at home with Jim and Joy. And today our guest is Kayce Maddux. She's a Catholic convert. She's a Spanish interpreter in a pro-life ministry. And Kayce, we are so delighted to have you on At Home today. And we want you to tell our family a little bit about yourself and then about your faith life growing up.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you all. I'm Kayce Maddux. I am married to my 1988 prom date, Brett. And we've been married a long time. We have 3 boys. The youngest is in high school, then I have one in college, and one who is out of college pursuing his dream to be a professional bass fisherman, of all things. I guess I was introduced to Jesus as a young child. I kind of cling to him. When I was 8, my sister was 3 and she passed away. And so that seemingly horrible thing really allowed me to rely on Jesus, and he became my best friend. And so I really grew up, he was my best friend. And I grew up, I was baptized as a baby in the Presbyterian church, and then grew up in South Florida, kind of, going to church here and there, not really consistently. I met my husband, who was a cradle Catholic. We kind of just bopped back and forth, and if we felt like it one weekend, we would go. But it really wasn't until we were engaged and I went through the RCIA program. And maybe not for all the right reasons. I was drawn to the beauty of the Catholic faith. And so I knew I wanted to get married in a Catholic church. And so God used even that seemingly insignificant desire for himself and his church to draw me in. So I went through RCIA, and we were got married and baptized our babies in the Catholic Church. And we were just kind of, not lukewarm, but we didn't know what we didn't know. So it wasn't until later on when we decided to put our kids in a Protestant school that we really felt we needed to know our faith backwards and forwards. So we started studying. My husband even started taking some classes at out of Connecticut, Holy Apostle Seminary. We really wanted to understand our faith backwards and forwards if we were going to put our kids in a Protestant school. And that just made us stronger Catholics. Some of the people from the school actually converted to Catholicism, including a teacher. It just made us understand the why behind our faith. So the relationship with Jesus was always there, but the whys and the depth of it just grew after that period.
Perfect.
It sounds, in speaking with you now, but also before this show, that you came into the church, RCIA, and it's a beautiful church, and you want to come in. When you first came in, how deep was the plunge in that? Was it just an easy transition for you going in? Was there any difficulties with that? The state of the church, or people in the church, or what? Or did you just go smoothly the whole way?
I was young and dumb, so I didn't put that much thought into it. So there really wasn't in the beginning that kind of, there were some things that I didn't understand, but the way that was presented to me at the time, it was like, well, that's okay if you don't understand it. It was not, well, if you're Catholic, you have to believe everything. So, and I believe everything the Catholic Church teaches, but it wasn't presented to me in that way. So I feel like I was robbed a little bit of all the beauty that I could have had, but in God's providence, He knew exactly when in my life that information and that depth needed to come to our doors.
So you had your kids in the Protestant school, and that became the beautiful journey for the both of you to really deepen your Catholic faith, just because it was going to be challenged, right? People are going to be asking your children about being Catholic as that goes.
Yes.
And so it was a real opportunity to say, no, I own this, but sometimes even being in the Catholic Church, I still feel like this, and I'm a convert since 2004. You're just always in kindergarten. There's just so much to learn and comprehend and believe, and it's endless. And I've never read so many books in comprehension, and there's so much in the Bible and the Catechism to understand, and it just keeps unfolding itself, right?
Yes, it is beautiful. There's always something new to learn, and I just love that so much. You can never stop learning. You can never stop learning. You can never stop growing deeper in your relationship with Jesus. And the sacraments give us the fastest and the quickest and the most intense intimacy with Jesus afforded to anyone, anywhere. Yeah. And I love that.
So now in your faith family, they weren't Catholic.
No.
So what happened to your family?
So my parents were not Catholic, but they were fine with, me doing whatever. They loved my husband and respected him, and they, didn't have a problem with that at all. I struggled a bit because I felt like I didn't have my place. I had my Protestant friends that I had a lot in common with, and I had my Catholic people that I kind of saw from afar, and I didn't feel like I had my place with them, and I was really at a crossroads. Like, God, you called me to the Catholic Church, but where are my people? Where are my people that I can just share everything about without preemptively explaining, well, I'm going to tell you this, but let me just tell you this, 2,000-year reason for, so I couldn't find my place. And there was a point where I was almost ready to say, forget it. The people who claim to be Catholic, I don't see them loving Jesus the way I see my Protestant friends. But then with my Protestant friends, I had already been given the gift of the knowledge of the Catholic faith, so I couldn't turn my back on that, but I had to come to Jesus with Jesus. So I actually left Mass before it started one day, drove to a parking lot nearby, bawled to the Lord, like, what is this? You called me to the Catholic Church, but I'm here, and where are my people? Why do I feel so alone? So shortly after that, I was helping at our church youth group, and I met a friend, and she was just this beautiful embodiment of loving Jesus and being authentically Catholic. And so it was just took that one person to show me we do exist. She taught me to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet. I went to confession for the first time since I had converted so many years prior, and it was beautiful. So she was just the first witness. And then it continued to grow. And so God gave me that little gift. And then he continued to show me other friends and other just amazing women who love the Lord and live their faith authentically.
Yeah, but it is a transition, and it is a journey from Protestant land to Catholic land. The language changes. The people change, and what's familiar isn't familiar anymore. And you do, once it's kind of like, you know, you're like the Israelites, and it's like, I want to go back to Egypt. And it's like, no, I don't really, but it's more familiar there, you know, and I was always afraid, and I'm sure you were, that you're gonna lose your identity, your personality, who you are, who God made you. It's like, I got to walk like a Catholic, talk like a Catholic. I got to, what does that mean? Like, who am I? You know, and God's like, no, I saved you, Kayce. I need you to be you, but to be fully Catholic and fully alive this way. And thank God that he set you in that place.
Yes, I'm not called to look and act and think like anybody else except for Jesus. That's my goal. And the Blessed Mother.
Perfect.
Yes. And so I did end up finding, you know, more authentically Catholic women in our rosary group. I joined a rosary group. I've never prayed a rosary ever. I thought it was something like these Italian grandmothers did. And I was like, okay, I'll just sit there and I'll try to learn. So I joined this group, and they were just amazing. Their faith, they were all ages, all stages in life. But just the one thing in common was our Lord, and just the love for the Lord and wanting to live their life accordingly. So we prayed the rosary. Then one of the members from the group said, hey, let's do 33 days to morning glory, Mary and consecration. So we started reading the book, and I was like, this is a little weird. I don't know about this. So I called my friend Holly, the original one. She had since moved. So what is up with this consecration to the Blessed Mother, this language? And being an interpreter, you know, I'm like, okay, well, that was written, you know, in French, and so the words are a little more flowery, so I was walking myself through it. But anyways, I did it, but I would always preface it with, like, Jesus, if this is what you want, then I'm going to consecrate myself to you through your mother. So one day, I dropped my child off, I think it was lacrosse practice at this field, and it was near EWTN right here. So I went to the chapel here, and I was just calling out to the Lord, okay, thank you for bringing me these friends. Okay, now what is up with now this Marian consecration? Tell me more about that, please. I need to know if it's okay. I would really love to have your mother in my life if that's your holy will. At that moment, a heat came across my entire body, a heat that I've never experienced before, like an internal heat. And it was Jesus just telling me, yes, I gave you my mother from the cross. She is a gift to you. She doesn't replace me, but she gets things done. So I made my consecration. We ended up doing a consecration a second time. In the interim there, when you make your Marian consecration, she gives you things you didn't even know you needed. So in that, my dad calls me up and says, hey, how do you become a Catholic?
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
And my friend made the connection for me. Do you realize when he made that call was around the same time of your first Marian consecration? So my dad found out he wanted to find out how to become Catholic. I found a church in his area in Jacksonville. I didn't know what my mom was going to think about it. She said that she was going to take my dad and be with him. And then she told me, I think the second class, she said, I started this for your dad, but I'm finishing it for myself. And so it was just seeing them receive the Eucharist on Holy Saturday was one of the most amazing gifts ever. So the rosary has just been a big part for me. I started learning, the kids being in the Protestant school, and we were learning history and all of that. So I learned about the Battle of Lepanto and how that battle was won through the power of the rosary. And interestingly, my youngest son's birthday is October 7th, the day that we celebrate that. So I'm learning all this, and I'm so excited. I'm talking about the rosary, and I'm learning about the signal graces that our Lord gives you when you do things his way. He kind of gives you winks from heaven saying you're on the right track. So I'm talking to my beautiful mother-in-law. We're at dinner. It's my husband, my mother-in-law, and one of my children. And so we're talking about the importance of the rosary and just the power that it has. And we go back to the car. So my son and my husband walk down one way, and my mother-in-law walks down another way because she's got these cute shoes on, and we have to take a roundabout path. So as we go down to the car, on this light post, there's this beautiful white rosary sitting on the light post. There is no reason that a white rosary should be sitting on a light post outside of a sushi restaurant in Birmingham, Alabama. It was amazing. And that was just another sign from above, like, yes, you were on the right track. Keep close to me, keep close to my mother, and we'll take care of you.
Yeah. Just thinking as you're sharing and, you know, the kind of steps you have to take or God leads you through to really understand, you know, intimacy with our Lord and his mother and St. Joseph. And it sounds like in your story where you started was, you know, a real need for fellowship with genuine people within the church. And then you learn, hey, I've got countless saints and angels, and I'm so desperate for fellowship, but they're alive. Mary's alive. Not only a Protestant brothers, but Jesus is alive.
Yes.
We say Jesus is alive, and Mary's alive, and St. Joseph is alive, and they don't take his place, but we've got so many people to relate to, and they're really interacting with you.
Yes, our Catholic toolbox is so big. We have so many different ways, and some might draw people more than others, but we have so many ways to be close to him. I remember on one day at her choice, I received the sacrament of healing, I received the sacrament of reconciliation, I received the Eucharist. I felt like I was Superwoman because Jesus was in me in every powerful way.
And that happened at her choice because Father John Paul is there.
Exactly.
And he leads Mass for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
It is. And Brett is with you every step of the way.
absolutely, we have grown so much together, and yes, he wishes he could just, you know, study full time. That would be his dream, just to study full time. And yes, and it's in this world that we live in, there's so many compromises, but when you try to stay on the path that the Lord has created for you, it's a lot less bumpy than if you try to do it your own way.
And it doesn't mean we're going to be free of trials and tribulations. I mean, life is happening, but you're saying, Jesus, I'm keeping my eyes fixed on you.
Yes.
Well, we're going to take a break at this point. We're going to hold you over for the final segment. We want to hear more about what's in the toolbox, you know, so that people can know it's just absolutely abundant what is in the Catholic Church by the grace of Jesus Christ. We'll be right back. There's plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. We're at Home with Jim and Joy, and we're finished our conversation with Kayce Maddux, who is a Catholic convert. She's also an interpreter. Now, Kayce, tell our family a little bit about being an interpreter and how God is using you in that way, culturally, but even, you know, in your witness.
Yeah, I don't know why I speak Spanish other than saying that it's a spiritual gift. He didn't give me the patience part, but maybe he gave me this gift of speaking Spanish. So, I mean, I do have my degree in Spanish, but it started growing up in South Florida. I was around it a lot, and so I wanted to learn and didn't take myself too seriously. So I was able to learn and practice and just use it. And so that has now gone into working in pro-life ministry. Part of my story is I did not use that gift for good at one point in my life, and God has given me the chance to make reparation for that. But I think being an interpreter isn't just about the language. You have to understand the cultures, both cultures, to kind of be that bridge between the two. So it's not just about the words, like how do you say this word in Spanish or in English? Well, tell me the context and I'll tell you what that means. And I feel like the Lord uses me sometimes too as an interpreter between Christian faiths, because like you said earlier, we might believe the same thing, but we call it different things. We have different vocabulary. So for me to be able to say, when she said this, that is just like this. So it helps dispel a lot of the myths that are separating us, because the enemy wants us to believe that we are not on the same team, and we are all in Team Jesus.
Amen. It's
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful. And you're also an interpreter, not by language, but between denominations and groups. And I think that's what you've been doing here today, is to say, hey, I lived in Protestant land, love my experiences there, especially intimacy and fellowship and people that are really embracing Christ and speak about him like this. But this is what I've also found. I found a few more tools maybe in the Catholic toolbox. I don't abandon anything from my Protestantism in terms of that intimacy, but wow, the sacraments and the saints and Mother Mary and so on.
You do not have to give up to become a Catholic, you get
Yeah.
so many more things. And I love my Protestant friends, and I get to talk openly to them. I don't have to watch what I say. They know me and they understand, and so I get to be exactly who I am, but I get to explain to them, we have the Bible. We have the sacraments. I get to receive Jesus, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. There is no greater intimacy than that. And then when I walk out into the world, I have that. I have the gift of reconciliation. I get a new baptism, basically, every time I go to reconciliation. It is just so beautiful, and I really want everybody to have it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and you're witnessing both worlds, and it's like, because when you do, you take the foundation, and Jesus says, no, the fear for me was that I got punked by God, and that was all wasted. You know, and he's like, I didn't know, Joy. I was very real to you there. We're just going to build on that.
Yes.
And it's going to get greater and better and deeper and richer. And I was like, it can't, because I thought I was hitting on all cylinders in Protestant.
Right.
And he was like, oh, she just doesn't know.
Exactly.
I have so much to share with her, right? And that's the experience that you take, and you go, I want to be set on fire, right? As Catherine Siena has once said, right? She said, become who you are, and you will set the world on fire. So we need to not be comparing ourselves with anybody else and say, no, these are the gifts and the talents that God has given to me. I can't speak one lick of Spanish, but this girl can. And she is like, and even the Spanish clients, they'll look at her like, is this white lady over here really talking like this? And she is in their culture, she is on their page, but more than that, you listen to their hearts, and that's where God uses you mightily, and that's such a beautiful thing to watch.
Thank you.
Closing word as we're closing out. Let's think about our Catholic brothers and sisters, and just maybe an exhortation and love for them to share what they have,
Yes.
not to be afraid with others. I mean,
Right.
the outcome of that is not in their hands, but to
Right.
share. What would you say to them?
Yes, you have been given the greatest gift in the entire world with your Catholic faith. If you don't understand it, then go learn about it. God does not make it hard. You do not have to have a PhD. You just ask the Lord to show you, and He will. I promise He will. And then whatever you have, share with others, because all gifts are meant to be shared.
Kayce, thank you. We look forward to sharing tomorrow more fully about you being a pro-life witness for the Lord and how the Lord has used you there. If you don't know your faith, learn about it. Get on with it and study to show yourself approved unto God, and then God will do what only He can do to bring grace, to introduce us more fully to His mother, to Saint Joseph, to all the angels and saints, and to make Himself so real through the sacraments of the Church. You're an important part of this family. You're never alone, and you're always at home with Jim and with Joy. Keep it on EWTN. Bye now.
Today our guest is Kayce Maddux. She is a Catholic convert, a Spanish interpreter in the pro-life ministry. And we are so blessed to have Kayce. I know at her Choice Birmingham Women's Center in downtown Birmingham, we do see a clientele of Hispanic women, and so it's an opportunity to minister to them. We know that Planned Parenthood certainly targets the African American community and the Spanish community, the Latino community, to encourage them to live the American dream and to abort their babies. And so we pray for the rest of the nation in the states where post-Roe they're still having issues and laws of defending or resetting, whether you're in New York or New Jersey or California, in those states where they are still pro-abortion states.
Pray that if you're catching this show somehow, some way, and you're considering abortion, that you get help today, that you wouldn't do that. Optionline.org is the number for you. Maybe a phone number up there as well. And it's a joy to share this show, but it is really a matter of life and death. And Kayce has an incredible story. She wasn't always, fully pro-life. It's amazing how God can forgive us, empower us, and how we can make reparation for our own sins. So I pray souls and lives would be saved today, and that you would embrace the gospel of life, that those who've had abortions, those who've been involved, you may become some of the most eloquent spokespersons on behalf of the gospel of life, because those who are forgiven much love much. So we'll be right back. There's plenty more to come. It's a very special show today. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We're at home with Jim and Joy, and today our guest again is Kayce Maddux. She's a Catholic convert. She's a Spanish interpreter in the pro-life ministry, and we are blessed to have her.
Amen.
Well, Kayce, we so enjoyed hearing your story yesterday, and today we want you to tell our family a little bit about your journey, about learning Spanish and living Spanish, and then also were you always pro-life?
Thank you for having me again. It's exciting, but the answer to that last question is no, I have not always been pro-life. I never even really thought about it as a younger child, as a teenager. Growing up in the 80s in South Florida, I mean, you heard things like, you know, it's my body and it's women's empowerment and the baby will ruin everything. So I heard all of that, but I wasn't in a position to take a stand either way. When I was in college, there was a friend of mine who Spanish was her first language, and we became friends, and I loved practicing Spanish with her. She loved practicing English with me, and we worked together part-time in this little restaurant, and she confided in me, I'm pregnant, and I wanted to help her. She was desperate. She was supposed to only be here for the summer. She was going back to her home country. She's like, I can't be pregnant. I don't love this guy. I don't want to be with this guy. I can't let my family know. So I did what I thought was best, and I helped her find an abortion provider. I went with her to the appointments. They did not want me to be with her. They actually, I believe this was a Planned Parenthood or some sort of offshoot of it. They did not want me in there. They thought I was pro-life, which in retrospect was such a big compliment. They thought that I was going to be investigating them and uncovering something. So I reassured them, no, I'm just here to interpret for her. So they allowed me to interpret for her. We hid it from her family. I was in the room when the physician performed the abortion. He treated her like an animal.
Paid for the abortion. I helped my granddaughter. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was trying to tell her that this is not the right thing to do, but she needed a ride down. I gave her a ride down, and I thought I was helping.
Right.
So that's important, because the whole thing of, well, Roe versus Wade has been overturned, but having a federal law, the law is an incredible teacher, and then the movements that are going on about women's rights and so on. I thought I was doing the right. So people just need to know that culpability. There's various degrees of culpability. Like, you really didn't know what was happening, but then you get in touch with. So you were in there in the abortion room, and she's Spanish speaking. So the doctor's not Spanish. You're saying she's saying this. She's saying. I mean, you were so close.
I was up close and personal.
So it really.
I saw the cylinder. All the things that we think are just theory, I saw. It's real. And it destroys women. And we have been fed a lie that this is a solution. And it is not. Abortion destroys women. It does not empower women. The enemy wants us to think that that's the answer, that women are so weak that there's no way that we could have a baby and be a mother and have a career. Well, that is a lie straight from hell. And whatever I have left in me, I want the world to know, do not believe the lies that the enemy is telling us. It is not an answer. It just adds more trauma on top of more trauma, and it's a vicious cycle. But that redemption is possible for all of us, for the women who had the abortions, for those that helped. And knowledge is power. Knowing what it is that you're doing, at least give the women that opportunity to know. They did not do an ultrasound on her, or if they did, they turned the screen around, there wasn't any sound. She did not have informed consent. She did not have that.
Right.
And that is horrific.
Right. And the beautiful thing, I love the journey as it being continuum, in that you got reconciliation, but God wanted more.
Yes.
Right? And that's what he does with us. He's like, okay, so that moment that the devil meant to destroy you and take you out of operation, right? To say, what a horrible person, whatever, and condemn, and that's what he does. God's saying, you've been healed, I have forgiven you, but there's more. And now I'm going to use you as a mouthpiece
Yes.
to speak with girls who come to our center who are in an unplanned pregnancy and who are, some, not all, some are considering to have an abortion. And now God is using you mightily, because I go in there with you, and in the beginning, now you're on your own, but we would go in together and you would be having this conversation. And I just want to tell you, family, that when I'm in the room there with Kayce, she is in pure love. And she is pleading to this mother. And it's a beautiful thing to see it in English and in Spanish. That whole thing, but the power of the Holy Spirit in that and how God does that. And so here you are, now you're his mouthpiece, right? And then not only that, but then God also has you teaching parenting classes to women who choose to have their babies with skills, right? So tell our family a little bit about that.
Right. So we counsel the women, and then also if they choose to keep their baby, they stay with us and they do an earn while you learn type of class, and we talk about things and we learn things. And the beauty of my class is it's smaller, so I can tailor it to whatever that girl might be going through. And if it wants to be, you know, a talk about her faith and her relationship with the Lord, we can turn it into that. Whatever she needs, I try to make myself available to that.
And then we give her all the resources that she needs,
Absolutely.
right? Cribs, car seat, diapers, wipes, baby clothes,
We make it
everything
as easy as possible for her to keep that child and to be the best version of herself that she possibly can. And I love how I ended up at Her Choice. It wasn't my choice to be at Her Choice, which makes me know that it was from the Lord.
Tell the story.
So my cousin, who I hadn't seen in a long time, she was in Birmingham. Her mom had a procedure at UAB, and she said, I'd love to meet with you. I haven't seen you in so many years. Can you drive down to UAB? And so I said, sure. So I drove down. There was no parking spots except right outside of Her Choice. I didn't even know where Her Choice was. I looked up, I said, oh, that's Her Choice. So I'm like, okay, God, what are you up to? Anything? Then I see a young Hispanic couple on the sidewalk kind of looking around like, where do I go? Is this where I go? I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So I need to go in there. So I walk in the door, I introduce myself, hey, you know, I speak Spanish, believe it or not. And blah, blah. So anyways, I sit in the waiting room. It was when I was learning about the rosary. So at that point I was in the beginning stages, but I understood there was power in the rosary. So I brought that rosary with me. I sat in the waiting room. They ended up speaking English, but I spoke Spanish on the phone. So I can just let them hear that I spoke Spanish in case they wanted to speak with me. But mostly what I did is I sat there and I just prayed my rosary. Well, lo and behold, my rosary breaks in the waiting room, which that means that the enemy is not happy with what you're doing, which makes me very happy. So anyways, that's how it started, and then you called.
Well, she came in and she was just so beautiful, and she comes in, and so I said, well, just give me your name and address, because we were